This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Today, we are talking about people need people. In our studio today, we have Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, the voice of Respectonomics, and my co-host, Sarah Benton. And as we often say, democratically, universally, ubiquitously.
Morning.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. But we hope you're listening. And this subject today of people need people is crucial. We've talked about the composition of the human being the body, the mind, and the soul, the spirit, the character, the inner being. We've talked about that. We've talked about the essentials for existence. We have 2 podcasts already completed. One dealt with food, the next one dealt with light, and this time we're dealing with people. And people need people. And one of the great fallacies is when somebody is fated as being a self-made person. You've ever heard that expression?
Yes.
She is a self-made, IT, whatever individual. That is absolute nonsense. Everybody needs everybody. People need people. And if anybody cared to look at their legacy, they would find out that those myriad people in their background, it might have been a mother, a father, a teacher, but lots of people. So we need people. And by the way, if you get down to the cornerstone of economics, can you imagine economics or politics or business or corporations without people? It's not possible.
They would fail to exist.
They would fail to exist, exactly. So what we're talking about is people need people. And what's happened is that we've come into a world today, I think, of what I call digital suppression, where the computers, the AI, the internet, the screens, and all those things have basically divided and conquered the idea of a person needing another person. And we've become very individualistic. We've probably become elitist and selfish in the bargain. I think there's a huge issue of loneliness, it's a very dangerous loneliness, because I remember when I was lonely, actually, I can tell you this, when I first came to Canada, I was lonely because I didn't have anybody around me to yap around with. And it's a horrible problem, but you know something about loneliness? It's very hard to describe it to somebody. It's almost like you've been there and you know what it's like, but you can't actually tell anybody what it's like. So,
right, hard to put it into words.
I think it is. So the expression I want to bring to us this morning is, let's look at why we need, the reasons that we need people in our lives. And I want to look at it, if I may, Sarah, look at it from 3 points of view, which we've done traditionally, and looking at the human composition. We talk about the body and the mind. And what are we going to call the soul today? Should we call it the spirit, the character, the inner being,
Maybe the inner being.
Okay, the inner being.
That's jumping out at me.
Everybody's got an inner being. And by the way, if you ever want to understand the inner being, you can't, because it's a total paradox or a contradiction. I'll give you a proof of that. The inner being is a vapor. The inner being is solid. You explain that. How can it be a vapor and a solid at the same time? Well, it is. And that's who we are. So let's go back, though, to this concept of the body. And what I want to emphasize here is this business of the people need people, is that in a very bodily sense, we need people. The easiest proof of the pudding is, we've often heard people saying, oh, I don't need anybody in my life. Well, when that individual is in a car accident, or when that individual experiences some kind of medical issue, what is the first thing that they do? They need somebody. They need a doctor, they need a farmer, they need somebody, but we all need somebody. And it's a little depressing in a way to look at it through the eyes of negativity and say, well, I've just had a stroke and therefore I need all this help. But the truth of the matter is, we can circumvent a lot of these issues by recognizing that people need people. And I think one of the things I'd like to talk about is when we talk about people being around us, we're talking about people that are helping us, people that are protecting us, people who are setting examples, people who lead, and people who follow. There's a tremendous composition of people around us. One of the things you may have noticed is you can go to well, you like going to football games, don't you?
I do.
Yes,
Yes.
well, I think you should be going to cricket games. I think we should get that straight.
Okay.
Have you ever been to a cricket game?
I have.
Have you really?
I
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
Did you understand it?
I think I got the gist for the most part.
Hmm. Did you
I could
know
probably
did you know there's a position on the cricket field called silly mid-off? And I don't know if that describes anybody you know, but
I I'm gonna leave that one alone altogether.
but seriously, have you ever noticed when you're in a crowd setting how often you're not really with anybody? So you're surrounded by people and you have no reason to be lonely in a sort of physical sense, but in actual fact, the connectivity with all the people in the stadium or all the people in the row that you're in. If you're with a friend, it can be, symbiotic. It can be, you can join together. But there are settings in which, well, when you go to, have you ever been to one of those sales meetings and there's 1,000 people in the room and you really don't know anybody? Have you ever had that one? Where we're
Yes.
surrounded by people, but still not actually connecting. So all I'm doing here is emphasizing the bodily need for people. Your
Okay.
mother has pointed out something which I think is almost ought to be a speech unto itself. And she's pointed out that when you look at these huge houses, these McMansions, whatever you want to call them, they are
Yeah.
some of them are architecturally beautiful. But each and every one of those needs a garbage collector. Somebody has to come along and collect the garbage once a week. And if you think about what happens if the garbage is not collected, you've got a problem with your McMansion.
Right.
It goes downhill pretty quickly. So our reliance on other people is extraordinary. And one of the things that Respectonomics brings time and time again to the table is awareness. To be aware of the proverbial garbage collector, to be aware of the person behind the counter, to be aware of the person who's maybe sitting on the 54th floor, is a senior executive, but in fact is very lonely. So awareness is, if that's all we put on the table today, awareness of other people, that is,
Mhm.
I think, a huge entry point.
Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, "I'm around people and I have people around me, but I'm incredibly lonely."
Bingo. So
I've
let's,
experienced it
okay.
myself, so I
Yeah,
can
I
empathize.
understand that very well. So let's now talk about, we've talked a bit about the physicality of the body to the body. We're now going to be talking about the reason for having people around as far as our minds are concerned.
Right.
And our minds work extremely well in consort with other people. You and I do it all the time. We're always bashing ideas back and forth.
Mhm.
And one of the things is if you're going to have people around you and you're going to bash ideas back and forth, it's not actually a bash. It's like a tennis game. You might return the ball and it's kind of fun doing
Right.
that. But there's no sense of um, priority. There's no sense of pride of authorship. They're just ideas that push back and forth. And
Mhm.
people need people to experiment and to look at those ideas. We need them as examples. Every one of us has five senses, and we pray that they always work. But if you have those five senses, they come into being, they come into their activity, they come into where they're meant to be when we are with other people.
Right.
I see you, I hear you, I can't touch you because we're doing it remotely. But when we're with people, the whole dimension of our five senses comes into being. It's the definition of the human being to have the five senses, and therefore, why don't we interpolate those five senses one with another? That's the
Right.
person to the person. Now, there's something else incredibly important about this. Two things I want to touch on. One is the neural connection. You just talked about being at a party or being with a group of people and being lonely. But you know that time when you go to a party and you have a really, really good time.
Hmm.
I'm not saying you got sloshed or anything, silly and whatever, but whatever fun stuff all happened, it was a wonderful party. And I say to you, how was the party? And you say, it was phenomenal. And then I say to you, what did you talk about? And your face completely blanks out. You haven't got a clue what you talked about. And that's because 90% of the connection we have human to human is neural. So that the way we look at one another, the way that we move our eyes, hands, my hands are always moving, as you may know. I think it was you that said to me, put your hands down and stop flapping around. I'm dying to do this.
But you can do that.
Well, I do. But, you know, the neural part of it is, as I say, 90%. You can remember this from your days in the classroom, that the class lasted for 45 minutes. You were lucky if you could remember 5 minutes of what was said.
Yes, that
And that's
happens as
not
well.
because you weren't paying attention or anything else. It's just that we don't absorb necessarily in that very sort of mathematical sense or linear sense, but we do absorb in a neural way. So getting together with people neurally is very important. Number one.
Right.
Number two, here's something that's really, to me, one of the biggest dynamics of all with people and people. We say people need people. We know that. And I think we've agreed already. I think we've beaten up on it. But what I want to point out is this. Have you ever examined the dynamics of what happens when two people walk alongside one another? It is quite incredible the dynamic that takes place. First of all, there is no leader and there's no follower. The
Mhm.
second thing that happens is neurally, I will start mirroring you and you will start mirroring me. That in itself is very comfortable or comforting. And then there's the other phenomenal aspect to walking alongside people, and that is that physiologically, things actually go on. As we walk along one with another, we find that endorphins and cortisol, and I forget all the other bits and pieces, but all of these things are migrating through our bodies and changing, bringing us to a place of togetherness and warmth with another individual. And if you think of it, and it's worth looking across the street or the park or whatever, how many people are actually walking together? Literally walking together, and not necessarily hand in hand. That's a lovely attribute. But what I'm looking at here is just walking alongside another individual, maybe not even talking, but just the physical presence of being alongside one another. It's a very powerful metaphor. It's not a metaphor, it's actually a reality. And
Right.
I can look at my own life and think of the number of times I go out and walk the dogs or I go out and cut a trail or something. I am not walking along with somebody else. But when I walk with somebody else, you know that feeling of almost euphoria, that sense that things are okay, things are coming together. Have you
I was going to
noticed?
say, sometimes there's no spoken word. It's about
Mhm.
presence,
Yeah,
right?
it's wonderful. But walking alongside is very important. And that's this part of this mental concept of we bring to each other together because we can share ideas. The dignity trust, for example, which is the one that you and I, should we say, head up. But the dignity trust is a group of what is it? I think there are about 8 or 9 of us. And interestingly, of those 8, most people don't know any of the other 8, which is I mean, they know them by name, perhaps by first
Right.
name. But they
Right.
don't know them socially.
Right.
And but the idea is that we're always exchanging ideas. So this idea of the person needs the person, people need people is axiomatically true. So that's deals with the body, and I think it deals with the mind. I'm now going to deal with, I think we've agreed we're going to call it the inner being. And here's something that is absolutely remarkable. It is unique to the human to the human being. And that is, and I'm going to start you off a little bit at a tangent. It's kind of strange. But if you start writing a journal, so you write things you did, and we've all beaten up on this point, and that is as you write, you find out things you didn't even know you knew. The sort of
Yeah.
revelations come to you. So we know that There's part of us that's ready to be released. We know that and writing is one way of doing it. But that information, that flow, is coming from the inner being, and the inner being cannot see what the mind can see. So the mind is very important to bring out this inner being. So far, so good, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So we get this inner being is now sort of front and center. The consideration is this, and the emphasis is, what happens when the inner being of one human being is allowed to engage with the inner being of the other human being? The
Mm.
release that happens, the symbiosis that takes place, the confidence and trust in one another is incredible. And it doesn't require anything other than me being with you at the street corner, in the grocery store, in your dining room, wherever I want to be, but with another individual. And all I do is engage my inner being with the inner being of the other individual. It's private, it's confidential, nobody can see it, but it is our human makeup, it's our human structure that we do have this inner being. And when we set the inner being free, we, in actual fact, set ourselves free.
Mm.
So it's a lovely, lovely idea to be with another person. Let's try again. We are with them physically, corporately, if you will. We do that. We are with another individual mentally. We draw alongside and we share ideas and so on. And then to cap it all, we allow the inner being to engage, to address the other human being in their inner being.
And I
What?
think one of the key words for me that when we're talking about that or we're referencing that to me is, again, it can be silent or it can be out
Mhm.
loud, but it's empathy.
Absolutely. It's the ultimate in empathy, because when you're not only drawing alongside, but when your inner being is allowed and set free to work with and to engage with the other inner being, by definition, it's empathy.
Right.
But it's incredibly private, it's incredibly confidential. And I've got one last comment to make, and that is that in business, in politics, in
Mhm.
leadership, if those people in those places of power were allowed and encouraged their inner beings to engage with, to collaborate with the inner being of another individual, that will flow through the organization. And not only through the organization, I will then go one step further with you and say it will flow through the community and ultimately through the nation. All because we've allowed the inner being to correlate, to engage with the other inner being.
Yep. I agree.
I rest my case.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sarah.